Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Ultramarine Linux. Ultramarine Linux is based on Fedora, so it's designed to be 100% bug-for-bug compatible with Fedora. Ultramarine offers the latest and greatest in open source software, yet maintaining rock-solid stability. As a Fedora user for many times, I've daily driven Fedora a lot over the years, and I can attest to that. Anytime I've run Fedora, it's always been very stable. Of course, making sure things don't break is not only the priority of the Ultramarine project, but also of Fedora as well. So they both go hand in hand, which is really great. And like they say on the website, it just works. So Ultramarine Linux is basically Fedora because it's based on Fedora. However, all their additions come with several tweaks pre-applied to make initial setup and daily usage seamless, which I think is really cool because anytime I've ever installed Fedora, I've always had to tweak it and get it right, like adding in the extra repos and the codecs and all that. So like they say here on the website, Ultramarine Linux is a Linux-based OS designed for your own personal workstation, or battle station, as they like to put it. It's designed to be as easy to use as possible, and it stays out of your way. I like that. Ultramarine Linux keeps up with the latest and greatest software in the open source community, while at the same time trying to be stable and secure. And Ultramarine is for everyone, whether you're a beginner or a tech enthusiast or even a Windows dropout. So let's dispense with my incessant non-stop babbling and let's move on. So I'm going to go to the download link here. I forgot where it is. Oh yeah, it's the big giant obvious button right in front of me. So I'm going to just click that here and jump over to the download page. And then here you can see we can pick our different flavors of Ultramarine, and we got the flagship version. We also got the GNOME version, Pantheon, and the KDE Plasma. So that is cool. And I'm going to go with the flagship version. The flagship version features the Budgie desktop, and I remember doing a review a long time ago on Ultramarine, and I really liked the way that they had the Budgie desktop laid out in their distro. From the screenshot here, it looks really cool again. So I'm going to download this, load it into a VM, and we'll check it out. Okay, here I am. I am booted into our live image, so I'm just going to hit enter here, pop in, and let's see how it goes. And here we are, we're loading into our live environment, and right off the bat it looks really nice. And there's our Ultramarine welcome screen here where we can access our installer, and very beautifully done, nice and polished. Here's our Budgie menu, and then our items on the bar and so forth. So let's get right to it and just install the Ultramarine here. So I'm going to launch the installer here, and I'm not sure which installer it'll be, whether it's the Calamares or the Fedora installer, but we'll know here in just a second. And there we go, and it looks like it's the Fedora installer. So I'm just going to go ahead and press continue here. And then here we can see our status, and it has auto-detected most of the stuff, except we need to adjust the system and the user settings. So I'm going to start off with the user settings. I'm just going to hit that, and then give myself a username. And that looks good, and I'm going to go with the defaults on the checkboxes. Going to add in a password. So I'm just going to jump up here and hit done. And now what we want to do is we want to do our installation here for our disk. And I'm just going to go ahead and overwrite everything on this disk and just let it automatically partition over it. So that'll delete any of the data, but I have an existing partition on here already. So I want to just go ahead and check this box here that says free up space after renaming, because if you have data on here already, you need to free it up. Otherwise it won't continue with the install. So I'm going to hit done here. And now you can see our reclamation disk space window came up. So what we got to do next is hit the delete all button, and then that'll delete everything on the partition and then reclaim space. Once you do that, then the disk is cleared for install. So we're good to go now. So I'm just going to hit continue, and now you can see the install is starting and it's looking good. So I'm excited. So I'm just going to let this go through the install process now, and when it's done, I'll be right back. Okay, and our install completed, so that wasn't too painful. So I'm just going to close that out, and then I'm just going to shut down, remove my ISO, and we'll boot right back in and see how everything went. So I'll be back in a flash. Okay, and here I am, back in. So it looks like everything went fine. I'm at rebooting here into the actual real installed environment here. And I'm just going to scooch down a little bit so I'm not so in the middle. And we'll see how everything went. If everything installed just fine, which I anticipate it will, we'll get this, the login screen. Nice. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And there it is. Excellent. So this is looking beautiful right off the bat, just like I expected it to. Nice. And here we got our different items here, like our networking, our volume control, and I'm slightly in the way. That's better. So our volume control widget there pops up, and when you click on it, you actually get access directly into the Budgie control center there for your sound settings. Then we have our clock, and same with the clock. When you click up on the sub menu, you get put into the Budgie control center into your date and time section, where you can set your different parameters here for your date and time, your time format, and whether you want it to automatically sync and so forth. Very cool. And then, of course, here at the end, we got access to our Raven menu. So when you hit that, it pops open our Raven menu, shows our widgets like our calendar, and then our volume control for your mic and speakers. And then you got a notifications section. So if you got any notifications, you got access to it. And then devices. So here we can just kind of see a list of our different devices. In this case, a sound device. And then you can even play some music right from here. That'll launch the music player. And there you got Rhythm Box. So that's what they're using for the music player. Nice. And then over here, of course, we got our desktop workspaces here. And then our system menu, or our Budgie menu. And here you can see like our top selection is all the items. And then, of course, you can go by categories like your accessories. You got your Budgie screenshot calculator, and so forth. Wallstreet control, that's kind of cool. That's a wallpaper utility, if I remember right. And when you run Wallstreet, that'll pick up some wallpapers there, kind of like Variety does. I think it like pulls wallpapers off the internet or something. I can't remember, but there we go. We're running it. And wow, what a nice background. I really like that. I'm just going to go with that. That's an instant hit with me. That's a beautiful scene there, the colors and everything. And then your change frequency or interval is right here. It'll change every 5 minutes if you wanted to keep using random wallpaper, and you would just check the random box to let it change intervals, but I'm just going to keep it right there. That's just so nice. I want to keep that for our presentation. And then here's our Budgie desktop settings. Just right-clicking on the desktop gave me easy access. And here we got different items here. This is our style. Then we have our desktop settings here. So here you can show desktop icons or turn them off. And I'll just slide that over a bit. So here they correspond to these icons here. When I shut that off, then you have no icons at all. And with your icons, here you can choose what you want to show. Like you got your home directory there and your trash. You can toggle those on and off. Easy peasy. And then your click policy, double click by default. Icon size, and your number of virtual desktops. That's down here. So if you like using different desktops like I do, here you can add in your desktops. You got 4 by default, but you can add in more. You can take some away. And then you got your fonts here, default, your Raven menu settings. So your Raven menu, these are the items that are currently in your Raven menu or widgets. And so this is what you're seeing here. It corresponds to what we have here. If you want to add in something, you can pop over here and choose some additional widgets here. For example, if I want to put in the usage monitor, I could hit add here, and now it's showing up in our list. So when we click our Raven menu, there it is. Easy access to our usage monitor. So that's how easy it is to add and take away widgets. Very cool. And then here's some settings for our different windows. So like our button layout here, by default we got them on the right side, but we can move them over to the left and have them over there. So if you're like coming over from a Mac or something, then that might be more comfortable. Personally, I like them on the right side, so I'm just going to keep them over there. And then you can center your windows. You can toggle all these options if you want to have it in there. You got automatic tiling too, which you get kind of a pseudo tiling, and it looks like they've migrated over to drag snap as the type of tiling rather than the built-in. But you can choose either one. So they give you a nice option there, which is cool. And tiling isn't really that significant on a floating window manager, in my opinion. Like if you make it full screen, this one's not going to tile next to it because they're both essentially floating windows, but they have basic tiling properties, so they'll just kind of snug up to each other when you open them with the tiling on. So that's kind of cool. It's a nice feature to add a slight tiling effect there into a floating desktop manager. And this Budgie desktop is just really nice. It just looks so clean and polished. Just makes me feel good using it. But as you can see, it doesn't really snap if you just drag it to one of the edges. So I'm not really quite sure what they mean by the snapping, drag, snap thing there. I guess I would need a little more experience to figure that out. And here's our bottom panel. And so all these items correspond to the items that you see here on the bottom panel, like this desktop switcher here. So for example, if I wanted to add more desktops, I could switch that up there and you can see them populate. Or if I just wanted to get rid of it altogether, I could do that too. I could come up here and just select it, which is our visual. And then when I removed it there or hit the trash can, it disappeared. Now I can put something else in there if I want. I could have put something else in there anyway, but let's just replace it with something. Let's see what else we got in here. A lot of great stuff to choose from. There's so many things you can add to your panel. And I really like the fact that you have so much to choose from. And there's our Show Desktop button. I'm just going to hit Add here and add that in. So now we got our Show Desktop button. And so I can click that and minimize all windows and bring them back up and restore them afterwards. So that's nice. I'm just going to use that in place of where the other one was. And then we got our auto start. So you can add applications in there if you want certain things to just automatically start when you boot up. So that's nice to have access to. And then our style. So here we got our widget style, icons, and so forth. So I'm going to open up our file browser here, just so we can have that as a reference, like when we do icons. But for our style, here we can use different styles if we want to change it. Like we can change our highlighting there. I selected the Fluent Red Dark. Our red highlights here, and our toggle buttons are red. Looks nice. That goes great with a dark theme, actually. Or we can make it green. And that's a light theme green, so that now we got a light background in our file manager. And then we can use green dark if we want to keep our backgrounds dark. And then we can go try some other stuff like the pink, and that goes good too, actually, just like red does. So that's not bad. And then here we can change our different icons. We got ePapyrus, Fluent, and Pyrus mainly. So that's our Pyrus Dark, ePyrus, and then there's our Pyrus Dark, which really kind of looks the same to me. And then we can go back to Fluent Dark. I like the default. I think the Fluent Dark looks pretty nice, so I'm going to stick with that. And then our cursors by default is the Adwaita, and I don't see any additional ones on there, but the Adwaita is the one I like, so it's good with me. And then your notification positions, when you get a notification and it pops up, by default it's in the bottom right corner, but it can also go up into the bottom left or the top right or top left. So you can choose where you want your notifications to pop up, and that's pretty handy. And then you got your dark theme, so you can just automatically switch or toggle your dark theme on and off. Is another way you can do that. But I think you gotta maybe have your widgets set differently. I don't know. Oh, you probably gotta turn off your built-in theme, and then that would turn your dark theme on and off. And then animations, of course, you can have them disabled if you don't like animations, but I like animations because I'm animated. So there you go. Nice. So let's jump back in our menu again and just take a quick look at some of our things that are installed. So here's our, under graphics, we're using the Eye of Mate image viewer, Firefox for our internet browser, Office, so we're running LibreOffice, and I like to launch Calc to kind of test out our theming, see how that looks. And the dark theming looks like it's working just great here with LibreOffice. So that's kind of an indicator to me that the theming was done very well in this distro, and I'm liking to see that. If I go to Tools, Options, and then View, and that's going to take a second to populate. I noticed lately on LibreOffice, the view has a little bit of a delay there when you hit it. So it didn't freeze up. It just has to think for a second. And I've noticed that on other distros too. So if I go in here to theme, I kind of like the Breeze theme as opposed to the default one they were using. So I'm going to hit that, and that looks nicer. For me, that's kind of more my taste. I think the Breeze dark goes really well with the dark theme on LibreOffice. But you also got Calibre and this Suku Agura, I think is how you pronounce that, if I'm reading that right. That's a nice theme. That's actually pretty colorful. I'm going to kind of stick with that Sukagora theme there. That's pretty cool. So, LibreOffice. Excellent. And then from there, we got our sound and video here. So we're using Rhythmbox and Parole as our media player. Nice. And then our system tools, we got access here to our Budgie Control Center, desktop settings, and so forth. But let's take a look at our Budgie Control Center here real quick. And here we got our network connections, our Bluetooth, backgrounds. So these are our default wallpapers that are outside of the Wallstreet. But I like the Wallstreet the best, so I'm probably going to stick with that. Although their default wallpaper there was actually pretty nice too, as are the other ones here. Cool. And that's a nice one too. I like that as well. That's probably my next favorite. And then over here we got our notification settings, our date and time, and all these different app notifications, kind of like you would see in your iPhone. And then we got our multitasking settings here, number of workspaces, and all that good stuff. Typically I use the default. I use workspaces on all displays because I have a single display, but once in a while I'll hook something else up, like a TV. And then we got our applications here for different settings that you can have also for notifications, and our privacy settings. So here you got location services. So if you like having location services turned on, you can do that there. And that's kind of handy if you're like shopping online and you want to use Walmart.com or something and have it detect the nearest store location. And then we got our privacy settings, your file history. You can turn that on and off here. And your history duration. By default, it's forever. And then back here, you got additional things like your online accounts. So if you're into having cloud accounts and so forth, Google, Nextcloud, Microsoft, Exchange, Fedora, and even your email stuff servers. All easily manageable right there. And then, of course, we got our sharing settings. So if you like to use remote desktop and remote into your computer from another location, you can turn that on there. And then, of course, your remote login, which is already on by default. And then your sound settings, which is where we were before when we clicked on our speaker icon. And you can just make all the necessary adjustments there. And you even have your alert sounds. And I like that there's a none option. But you got your barking, your drip, glass, and the sonar sound. Wow. I like none. That's my favorite alert sound, personally. All the other ones are slightly annoying, although the dog bark is kind of cool. And then our power settings here, you can turn off your screen blanking by setting it to never, or you can just give it a higher time, like 15 minutes if you don't like the default. And then our automatic suspend, again, you can turn that off if you don't want it to suspend. That's typically what I do. Otherwise, you can crank up the time if you want to give it more time, like an hour. That's, for me, a compromise. And then you got your display settings here. And so there you can change your resolution and so forth. And again, you got your screen lock in addition to the blanking. So, delay, I mean. But your screen lock, typically I turn that off. But if you're in an environment where you're sharing your computer with other people, you might want to turn it off. And then our mouse settings there, you would use the right button for if you're a lefty. But I'm a righty, so I'm just going to keep it at its default. Here's our keyboard settings. And again, I would keep all these at the defaults. But nice, easy access to all the different keyboards, shortcuts, and settings, and so forth. And then we got our printers. I don't have any printers hooked up to this because it's a VM. removable media settings, color settings, regional and language, so you can add more regions if you have the need to, accessibility settings, so if you have any kind of special needs where you might need extra large text or zooming capability, sound keys and so forth. And then we got our users. So here we can set easily our icon or our avatar. I'm going to choose that guitar up there. Well, that's cool. I like that. And then you can unlock it if you want to change your password and do other things like that. And then here's our default apps. So, for example, if you wanted to change your default web browser or your music player, you can make that like some other music player if you installed something else. And then our date and time, which is where we were before when we clicked on our clock settings. And then about, which just kind of gives us an overview of our whole thing. It's kind of like the GUI version of NeoFetch. So here we got our Budgie version, windowing system and all that, so you can get all your details there. Excellent. So, looking good. I'm impressed here with what I'm seeing so far. And back in our system tools, what else do we got? Software. So let's take a look at our software. Our software center should be popping up here any second now. The first time you launch this, you're going to have to let it populate the software catalog, and that could take a minute, but once it populates, then you're all good. And here we go. So nice, we got our categories all laid out here, and I believe this is the GNOME Software Center. Can't remember. I typically use the terminal when I install software, so I don't keep too much up on these, but this looks like the GNOME Software Center. And then we can choose something like Inkscape, and we got FlatHub and the Ultramarine Linux repos. So I'm going to choose the Ultramarine Linux repo. That's what I would prefer, but I like having the FlatHub option there. So that's pretty nice, because there are cases where I would prefer FlatHub. OBS Studio would probably be one of them. So there we go. It looks like it installed just fine. So I could open it from here, or I could go in my menu and just make sure it showed up, and there it is. So if I hit that, that'll open up Inkscape, and then we should have the latest stable version on here, which I think is 1.3 something, which is good. And I'm just going to select a template here just to speed it up a little. And then there we go. It opened up, and it looks like it really blends well with the theming. And I'm taking our helping about there, and yes, it is 1.3.2 from November 23. I would say that's the latest stable there. Looking good. So that's our GUI installer, and if we go back here hitting the arrow, we can also see updates that are available. So I could restart and update that if I wanted to, but I don't think I'm gonna right now. No need for this demo. And so let's move on a little bit. Let's pop over here. And we were in here last, but so I'm just going to open up my terminal here. And let's do an install on the terminal as well. The installer in Fedora is DNF. And so I'm just going to do a sudo DNF inf, which is short for install. And then let's install GIMP. So I'm just going to authenticate here. And then that'll install GIMP through the terminal. So that's how you do it, through the terminal. And of course, Fedora is an RPM-based distro, their package manager here, using the DNF installer. And there's actually a faster DNF available, DNF 5. I'm going to hit yes here. And that's in beta right now. But DNF 5 is really fast. And typically when I'm on Fedora, I like to download that and use it. But a DNF here is quite acceptable as well. But I have noticed that DNF 5 does seem to be noticeably faster, which is cool. And this is really my favorite way to install, is just right through the terminal. For me, it's just kind of quicker and more comfortable. But we're all different. Okay, there we go. So that installed GIMP. And I think while I'm at it, I'm just going to add an htop here. Of course, htop might already be installed, but let's just see what it does. And yes, the Ultramarine team was already on top of it. So htop is already installed, didn't have to install it. And so if I go in here, our memory is showing 2.18 gigs, and that is actually quite high, but I think that's just because I've been doing so much stuff in here, and I am in a VM. So I think I'm just going to do a quick reboot here and just see what the actual idle is on this, even in a VM. So I'll just pop over here, hit the old log out, actually reboot, and I'll be back in a flash. Okay, I'm booted back in, and you can see my avatar there that I changed the guitar. Cool, so that worked. So we're back into our desktop here. I'm just going to go back up, jump back into our terminal, and then just let's zoom in on that a bit and run htop again, and we should have a much better result this time. And there we go, 832 megs here of RAM being used at idle. So that is a more accurate depiction, I think, and that looks pretty good. And that's kind of about what I would expect to be, somewhere in the 800 range. So not bad. Excellent. So I'm going to close out of there. And another thing I want to do, because when I mouse over here in our categories, you can see that the categories don't change. I have to actually physically click those. And I like to change those by hovering. So I'm going to go into our, I think it's our desktop settings, which would be right there. And let's go in here and then select our bottom panel, which is right there. And so then in our bottom panel, I just want to select our Budgie menu. And then over here, you can see our different settings for the Budgie menu. Like we could show our label if we want to, which is nice. And we can even customize our label. But here we got our rollover mouse. So I want to toggle that. Now when I roll over my categories, you can see they change automatically. For me, that's a lot more comfortable. So I'm going to leave it like that so I can have it. So rollover mouse is the setting we're looking for there. And of course, we can change any number of these items here on the tray just by clicking on them and adjusting their settings. And since we're in here, let's add in another item to our menu here. Let's put in a weather widget. I always like the weather widget, and Budgie has a really nice one. So I'm just going to add that in here. It's called WeatherShow. And so now you see that it's in the center here. And that's a good spot. I like it in the center. I think I'll just leave it there. So when we click on WeatherShow, then we're in our settings, and by default, it detects your location, I believe. And so this one's reading London. So in London, you can see the temperature right now is right around 16 degrees. Or, I think I read that wrong. That was the time. Anyways, let's put in another city like Leicester. That's like the oldest city in Great Britain. Wow, one of the oldest in the Midlands there. And so there you can see our temperature, and partly sunny, nice. And then here, by clicking Show Dynamic, you can see the temperature actually show up. So it's actually 11 degrees. And then if you want Fahrenheit, you can check the Fahrenheit box, and then that'll change, showing 51 degrees. Excellent. So there you go. A moderately nice day there in Leicester. And of course, if you want to try another town like my old favorite, Bedford. And pop that in there, hit enter. And there you go. It looks like the weather's about the same. 11 degrees there. Nice. Yeah, Bedford, England. That's a nice town there. Brings back memories. I used to live right across from a pub. Go over, have a pint of bitter. Near the old Ladbrokes Country Club. Nice. So here you got our custom location. So I could also give this a name like My Spot. Or I could have just called it Bedford, I guess. But, you know, you can call it anything you want. And then that'll give a name next to your widget, because you can see it up here on the desktop as well as in the panel. So on the desktop now it says My Spot. I know, it's kind of lame, but, you know. Really, it's better just to give it a city name like Bedford, but just want to demo that. And we got broken clouds right now at 11 degrees centigrade. Nice. So now that I got my weather on here, I'm ready for my 2 cents. And I am more than impressed. Not just impressed, but more than impressed. Ultramarine is Fedora exactly the way I would set it up. So if I was installing Fedora, I would have to spend a bunch of extra time to set it up, to get it to my liking. And with Ultramarine, I don't have to do that because it's already pre-configured. In fact, if you're running Fedora native right now, you can actually go out to the website and install a script that's available on their webpage to install Ultramarine right from your Fedora desktop. So they make it really easy, and I think that's a really nice feature. Another big plus for Ultramarine. And what they've done with the Budgie desktop is extra impressive for me. I just love the way they integrated Budgie so seamlessly, and the way it's laid out and themed is just fantastic. I don't think I would change a thing with this Budgie setup. So again, another big plus. This is just a very polished and well done distro, and it seems very stable and snappy. So I like what I've seen here, and I have a soft spot for RPM type distros anyway, especially with Fedora and OpenSUSE, because like I've said many times before, with these RPM type distros, you get that newness of Arch with the Debian-like stability, and I like that. That's really a winning combination for me. And Ultramarine Linux is a winning distro in my book, so I give it double thumbs up. And that should do it for this review. I really hope it was helpful, and if it was, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps on the algorithm there, and I appreciate those thumbs up. And while you're at it, hit subscribe as well. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.